Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that's within me. Hello there. This is your friend, Gladys Elder Hartworth, from the Heart of God. And today I am interviewing a great friend, Lim Kinslow. Lim, thanks for being with us today.
Well, you're just more than welcome. I really enjoy working with you, and I really enjoyed our telecast of it last week or week before last, whenever it was on.
Yes, and you know it's going all over the world into the third world countries, and every time I get the notice that we're in maybe the Philippines or I forgot now where all, but it blesses me to know that we're reaching out.
Exactly.
That means a lot. But now you have your own, I call it ministry, and that is, you have a burden for Southern gospel music industry, but yet each individual seems like you have a heart for the individual, not just the industry, but the individual. When did you, Lim, and you can talk with us about, but when did you begin to just think, I just want to do something to keep their song alive in their heart?
Last Thursday, about 2 o'clock. No.
Really?
I'm kidding you. No, when I got to thinking about the pioneers in gospel music, of course I had to start with the father of Southern gospel music,
Yes.
which there is no dispute in anybody's mind that's been in the industry very long. They know that it started in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee.
Yes.
David Vaughn, James D. Vaughn, is the father of Southern gospel music, and that's where it all started. 1900, he was in Giles County, principal of a little school,
Okay.
and he had compiled at that point in time one songbook. But he knew his calling wasn't to be a school teacher and or a principal of a school. It was to be publishing gospel music. So 1902, he moved the family to Lawrenceburg, found a building that was appropriate, and started setting up his first publishing company.
Okay.
Then his brother joined him, and they started working on the second songbook. But things were extremely slow, and he couldn't figure out exactly what he needed to do to make things grow faster, because he needed more money to do what he planned on doing. And that just wasn't happening, so he kept thinking, there's got to be something else I can do to create more income. Things really started happening in 1910, but from 1902 to 1910, it only sold 30,000 songbooks. And that was with the one and then the two songbooks. So he had a bright idea one day, because they had already started the shape note school. And so he had a bright idea. Why not take a quartet out of the singing school, which would not be a quartet at that point. It'd just pick, bass singer,
Right.
baritone singer, lead, and so on and so
Right.
forth. Put them together and put them on the road selling songbooks.
Oh, okay.
And he would pay them a percentage of what they sold. Now, at that point in time, he also knew back then some of the travel was in a horse and buggy, or a horse and a farm wagon.
Right, right.
So he started thinking along the lines of supplying transportation for these groups. And long toward the end of this particular segment of his thinking, he had 16 groups that they had put together out of the
16.
school, the Do Re Mi school, traveling in different states even, and singing gospel music, promoting the songbooks. And by that time, they were up in the 280,000 songbooks sold. So that afforded him the income that he said, well, we need something else now to develop further as far as the publishing company is concerned. He met a fellow called Fred Green on the street out in front of his building one afternoon. Didn't know the guy from Adam, but they just struck up a conversation. And Mr. Green told him he was in World War II, blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, what did you do in the war? He said, I was in communications. He said, in communications? Now, what does that mean?
Yeah.
He said, well, he said, there's going to be a revolution in this country very shortly. It's a thing called radio. He said, radio? He said, yes. And he said, everybody will have a set at some point in time. And so Mr. Vaughn said, can that radio carry a voice?
Oh, my gracious.
Broadcast a voice? And Mr. Green said, yes, sir, it certainly can. He said, Fred, could you build me a radio station? He said, I can. He said, I can put it together for you. He said, the only thing is I'll have to travel in order to find the parts because they're not available here.
Uh-huh.
I'll have to get on the train and go get all the parts together to put the radio station together, and then I'll be ready to go on the air. He said, if you can do that for me, he said, let's go in the office right now and we'll settle this deal. So they go in the office. He writes Mr. Green a check, and he says, now you take this check and you buy whatever we need to buy to build the radio station. Mm-hmm. So he did. October of that year, that was about June or July, October of that year, he was back and already had it all put together. And anyone around the country that knows anything about Nashville, Tennessee, the first thing they'll ask you if you tell them you're from Nashville, they'll say, oh, yeah, you're in Nashville, Tennessee, the home of country music.
Yes.
Or country music capital of the world.
Right.
And if you ask anybody, well, what was the first radio station in the state of Tennessee? They'll say WSM, of course.
Right.
It was not.
Okay.
WOAN radio in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee.
Oh, okay.
Went on the air 3 years before WSM did. And it played only gospel music. It promoted Vaughn Publishing Company. And by that time, he was ready to come up with something that would let the quartets that he had on staff travel out a little further, because at that point in time, he'd already started. The groups would have an early morning radio broadcast.
Yes.
Could be 15 minutes, could be 30, but most of them were 15. But you could only travel out as far as you could go to be back in to do your early morning broadcast.
Right.
Because there was no way to record anything back then. So he was the first one. In fact, gospel music had a lot of firsts that people don't even realize today. But that was the first recording in the state of Tennessee. Bristol, everybody thinks, was where the first recording started.
Yeah.
Country, bluegrass, whatever. Of course, bluegrass hadn't come on scene by a long shot at that point. But Vaughn Publishing in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, had the very first recording. Now, it was somewhat like an old radio acetate.
Yeah.
That's what they started with. But anyway, it was a recording. So that meant that the groups could book dates further out because they didn't have to be back in the morning. He could play a program.
Yeah.
So he had that first. So at one time, as I said earlier, he had 16 groups traveling
That's fantastic.
in vehicles that he was supplying to them and paying them percentages of what they sold.
Gospel music, to me, I like country gospel. I really do. But anything gospel, I love. Now, over the years, Lim, some of the, what we call the voices that began to be so popular, who would you say in our area rose to the top the quickest back in the day of the quartets? Can you think of
Well,
one in particular?
in our area,
Right.
the Nashville, Tennessee area,
that people can identify with,
it would have been the Spear family.
the Spear family.
But Mom and Dad Spear started in Alabama in 1926. And they met at an all-day singing and dinner on the ground, which was, that was what we call later, and which was the biggest and things that really built the industry, was the all-night singing era.
Yeah.
But back in those days, the all-day singing and dinner on the ground was about the same principle. So they met at one of those as teenagers. And then they started dating later, got married, and he knew there was something that he could do that would be a lot more enjoyable and pay him more than farming or picking
Yeah.
cotton or cutting tobacco or whatever.
Right.
But anyway, he at that point in time, he had already gone to a singing school. He had learned to sing the shape notes. So he and Mom and her sister and her husband teamed up for the first Spear family quartet. They would be the ones in our area, but there was a couple of three before them that had national prominence. Everybody thought and I always commented on the Chuckwagon gang being from Fort Worth, Texas.
Right.
They were actually from Lubbock, Texas. And that's quite a story. And that was in 1935 that their daddy was in the same boat. He was picking cotton on a cotton farm there. And he thought, with these kids coming up, there's something I can do more than pick cotton.
Yeah.
So he started teaching the kids. He already had been to a singing school. He started teaching the kids to sing. And he thought, well, he'd heard of the Rangers Quartet out of Dallas. He'd heard of the Blackwoods Quartet, 1927 they started, that had early morning radio broadcasts, and they worked their dates out from the radio broadcast. So he thought, we've got to get on radio. So he got on radio there in Lubbock, and they they agreed to give him a 15-minute program in the morning, paid him $15 a week
Yes.
to do the broadcast 5 days a week. And by the time they did that, they decided they needed to record an album of some sort. So they went to San Antonio, Texas, and that was back when the talking machine, the record companies had what they called a talking machine, and they could set that up in a hotel room
Yeah.
and record. So that's what they did there. And from that time forward, they gave Dad Carter, which was the Carter family, no relationship to the Carter family from here.
Oh,
That
okay.
started in Bristol. But they gave him or signed him to a lifetime recording contract. The only gospel music artist ever had a lifetime recording contract.
That's interesting.
Well, over their entire career, it's pretty well been certified that they sold over 85 million records.
Wow, now that is a lot of records.
And the Rangers, they were the premier West. They were the premier quartet at that time. So Dad kept striving to be as good as the Rangers. So the Rangers then invited them to come to Dallas for what they called back then they issued them a proclamation which was Texas Rangers.
Yeah.
They later changed that to same as Tennessee and Georgia, and because the Statesmen were the first one to be recognized with a proclamation as the ambassadors of goodwill of Georgia. And then they changed theirs in Texas to ambassador of goodwill instead of proclamation stating you're Texas
Okay.
Ranger.
Yeah, I want to ask you though, I caught something there, Liam. Now, I understand, like if there's family involved, they could say the Carter family and so on, the Statlers, whatever. But how do you, like the Jordan River Boys, how did whoever choose that name? I'm always interested in how they choose their identity.
Well, that was a godsend, I think, because it's not easy when you start and when you're working with the industry and you're doing the what was called at that time the circuit, which included all the all-night sings.
Everything can be technical, can't it?
Very. But the problem, you might have what you think is a decent name to be commercial, but it's really not. You go to another place 100 miles away and sing, and somebody opens for you with the same name as that one that somebody had night before last. So that's not a very commercial name. So we reorganized in 1979. We reorganized an old quartet name out of Indianapolis, Indiana, and anybody around 6 or 7, 8 states around Indiana knew of the Cato's Tabernacle.
Yeah.
Because it was one of the biggest, largest wooden structures around, like where they had camp meetings and stuff like that. Well, that's where the first group with them organized, because they were on CBS radio on Sundays. Cato's was.
Yeah.
Well, the Monitors Quartet was organized out of there, which then the radio station gave them a 15-minute, worked it out with the network, gave them a 15-minute broadcast, which was like having a national television show today.
Yeah.
But anyway, they were working for Cato and doing the radio broadcast. So in '79, of course, they hadn't worked in years. So that's the only name that we could come up with that nobody was using and hadn't been used in a number of years. And I didn't know this until that particular day that this happened, but if you got a group name that has no activity whatsoever, not selling CDs or whatever, or records in that case, over the air or by magazine or whatever, no activity for 5 years, then that name's up for grab. So anyway, we didn't have any problem with that, so we chose that name. And shortly thereafter, I was sitting in the office, the National Quartet Convention office and the quartet office, and a fellow by the name of Monty Matthews, which was an original name of the Jordanaires, or a member of the Jordanaires, he and his brother Bill. So he was looking for Rex Allen Jr., which was the son of the old singing cowboy, Rex Allen, and he had gone to lunch, so the office was locked. He was walking up and down the hallway, so he saw National Quartet Convention and Monitors Quartet on the door, so he knocked on the door, and secretary came to my door and said, "There's a fellow out here by the name of Monty Matthews that wants to see you a minute." I said, "Is that the Monty Matthews?" She said, "I don't know. He just said his name was Monty Matthews." I said, "Well, ask him to come in, please." So he did. First thing he said when he came in, he said, "You probably don't know this, but," he said, "my brother and I were original members in 1948 of the Jordanaires, and we organized in Springfield, Missouri, to work with Red Foley on the Ozark Jubilee." And he said, "We started doing gospel music." And he said, you probably didn't know that." I said, "I did know that. I knew that y'all started singing gospel music. In fact, you started with a trio. Your daddy was what they called a traveling preacher." And sometimes he even traveled from meeting to meeting on a horseback.
Interesting.
He started.
Interesting.
You and your brother and him as a trio singing gospel music. He said, "You knew that?" I said, "Yes, sir, I did." And I said, "What's the name?" And he said, "My brother and I have talked for years. If we ever started a gospel quartet, we already had the name." I said, "What is it?" He said, "I'll tell you in a minute." I said, "Well, now tell me what it is." He said, "I'll tell you in a minute." He said that 5 times before he actually told me, because he said, I'm going to watch your reactions rather than what you say.
Okay.
When I tell you the name. So he talked on a minute, and he said, Bill and I are too old to even think about starting a quartet, so we'll never do that. But he said, if we started one today, we would call it the Jordan River Boys. Well, I like to fell out on the floor. And he said, you had the reaction that I thought you did, I thought you would. So I started a name search that afternoon, and I went all the way to Washington. Thank you. I went all the way to Washington, D.C. I started in Tennessee, state capital. Nobody had used that name in Tennessee. And then I called Mr. Whitt, which was president of the National Quartet Convention, and I said, I need to ask you a question. He said, all right, fire away. I said, have you ever heard a gospel quartet or a trio named the Jordan River Boys? And it felt like 10 minutes of silence.
Yeah.
But it was a few seconds. And he said, my God, Lim, no, I haven't. But I don't know why I've never heard it. He said, what a name. So anyway, it was about a month and a half before the convention of that year. And the first night of the convention, I asked Jerry Goff, I'm talking an awful lot, am I not?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I asked him that night, same question. And he was eating a hot dog and drinking a Coke, and I asked him, I said, Jerry, I need to ask you a question, but you can't mention this to nobody until I tell you it's okay. He said, all right, what is it? I said, have you ever heard of a quartet or a trio named the Jordan River Boys? He was right in the middle of a bite of hot dog, and he stopped chewing, and he looked at me, and he said, God, my God, praise the Lord. He said, Lim, I've never heard of a group with that name.
Wow, that
But
is
why-
amazing.
But why not? He said, it's such a natural.
Yeah,
So that's how we came about
that's
with it.
wonderful. I want to talk to our listening audience for just a minute. Nashville goes way, way, way back in Southern gospel. All night singing Wally Fowler, and guest today has been Brother Lim Kinslow, giving us a lot of history of Southern gospel music. It's not something that just happened. Takes a lot of organization, commitment, stability. A lot of hard work goes into it. Hard work. But you do the monthly Southern Gospel Breakfast Club, and you have different artists that comes in. And I think it's very interesting, Lim. I don't know how much time we've got. Okay. When you have your guests come in, share with our listening audience some of the guests that you've had.
Well, let me back up just a hair, and I'll make it quick. But
Yeah.
when I got to thinking about James D. Vaughn, the museum, because I took a couple of people down to the museum back a few months ago. We were there for an hour and a half. No one showed up. I thought, how pathetic,
Yeah.
because that is the beginning of Southern gospel music.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why that I did what I started to do at that point in time. Talked to the Senate and the House of the state of Tennessee. Took about a year and 2 months to get this done, but praise the Lord, we accomplished it.
Yes.
We met on the Senate floor, and they signed in fact, they had signed it a month earlier, but that's when they could schedule the reading and have us present. And they told me I could have 6 guests come with me. So we met, and they read the proclamation and everything. That was February 22nd. Soon be 2 years ago. This coming
That's
February
amazing.
will be 2 years ago. But
Yeah.
that stated without doubt, without question, that Lawrenceburg, Tennessee is the Southern gospel music capital of the world.
Yeah.
That's where it all started. So I'm very pleased about that. Now, what was the question you asked me?
Some of the guests that you've had that comes into your
Well, we
Breakfast
have
Club.
represented members of everybody, groups from cathedrals, Jerry and the Goffs, Spear family, Hemp Hills, And we have a gentleman that you know very well that comes to church here with us.
Yes.
That was with Betty Jean Robinson for years.
Yes.
But we have a number of groups like that represented at the breakfast. But that was a secondary thing that I wanted to do in conjunction with everything and all I could do for Lawrenceburg.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 more things that I'm working on for Lawrenceburg that will be pretty magnificent when it's done.
That's amazing. And the fact that you carry such a burden for Southern gospel and still giving honor where honor is due, that doesn't happen a lot. So I admire you for making sure that you're giving honor where honor is due. And when I come to these breakfasts, Lim, it touches me to see that so many of these singers, that they've already seen their best days, and they know it. But there's something about their song that still keeps them going. It keeps their song alive. It keeps something burning within them that just refuses to go out. So I think it's good of you to help them accomplish something in their senior years.
Well,
you know?
right, and not only that, and from the beginning, I started telling everybody we're not too old, even at our age, we're not too old to make new memories. And we all got many memories of the past.
Right.
But a lot of these guys, they don't see each other 4 or 5 times a month like
Right.
we used to.
Right.
So that's part of the reason.
It means a lot.
Yeah,
It does. And we all need the fellowship. I know I need the fellowship of other ministers, other pastors, and I'm sure that holds true like the gospel singers. They need the fellowship of,
absolutely.
yeah, and people still receiving songs, God still giving songs in their old age. That just amazes me. You know, when I sit there and began to listen to different ones give a little bit of their life story and the struggle, the tears, their brokenness, the heartbreak, but yet still maintaining their song. There's a lot to be said about that.
Absolutely.
You know, when as we get older, sometimes about all we've got is memories. But to hold on to those memories, I think, is absolutely necessary. I'm going to pray with you right now. If you are a minister, gospel singer, and maybe on up in age like I am, don't give up. Keep singing your song. Keep preaching that message. Keep exalting the blood-stained banner of the Lord. I've enjoyed Lim sharing with us the history and giving credit and honor where honor is due to where this thing first began there in Lawrenceburg. God is so good. I pray right now that God will bless you. And if you're singing, honey, sing the blessings of God. If you're preaching, preach the name of Jesus. Stay faithful in the things of God. Until this time, next time, God bless you. It's my prayer in Jesus' name.